My own sister had an affair with my husband for a year and showed up pregnant at my house. There is a specific sound my phone makes when my sister calls that still makes my stomach tighten, even though I have her muted now, and her name is buried somewhere in my contacts where I never have to see it by accident. Back when everything started, that sound meant I needed to sit down, get a drink of water, and clear my schedule, because she never called just to say hi. She called to unload an entire season of whatever drama her life had turned into that week. I used to joke that she was the main character and I was the tech support, always on standby to reset her when she crashed. And the joke stopped being funny years before I was ready to admit it. I work as an office assistant in a small medical clinic. Nothing glamorous, just charts, phones, and people complaining about waiting times like I personally invented bureaucracy. I live in a medium-sized town in the middle of the country, where nothing huge ever seems to happen unless it happens to someone you know. I met my husband at one of those boring neighborhood barbecues where everybody pretends to love each other, and for a long time I really believed he was the safe thing I did for myself. The one area of my life that was not a mess, not complicated, not a time bomb. You know that feeling when you look at someone and think, fine, at least this part of my life I do not have to worry about every second? That was him for me. Or at least that is what I told myself. My sister lived in another state after she got married the first time, and even with the distance we were close in that intense, messy way that sisters can be when they know each other's teenage secrets and adult mistakes. She had this big, loud laugh that filled every room, and when she was happy, everyone around her kind of got dragged into that happiness whether they wanted to or not. The problem was she was not happy very often, at least not for long. For years, her whole identity turned into this one thing she could not get: a baby. She went through every exam you can imagine, all the awkward tests with doctors who spoke in careful little phrases like unexplained infertility and it might still happen naturally, while handing her bills that looked like phone numbers. She did treatments, tracked her cycle with more dedication than I put into my job, changed her diet, downloaded every fertility app that existed, and still, nothing. When she told me she was doing an artificial fertilization procedure, she sounded like someone signing up for a marathon while already limping, hopeful and exhausted at the same time. The first time she tried, she spent what was left of their savings. The second time, she took out a loan. I sent her $1,000 I did not really have just so she could pay part of it and not feel completely alone in that payment room. I called it a gift and refused to let her talk about paying me back, because somehow it felt like if I helped enough, the universe would finally give her what she wanted and I could stop waking up to her crying at 2 a.m. Both procedures failed. Completely. No pregnancy, just more bruises on her arms and a stack of medical forms she shoved in a drawer. Her marriage started cracking right there. And honestly, I could not even blame her ex for some of the things he said, even though I hated him a little for saying them out loud. He was tired. He was drowning in debt. He had never wanted to gamble every cent they had on something no doctor could guarantee. They fought all the time. Nasty fights where he said she was obsessed and she said he did not care about her or their future. I told her to slow down, to breathe, to give her body time. Our parents told her she needed to accept that maybe being an aunt was what the universe planned for her. She heard exactly none of that. When she told us she had started the adoption process without even telling him, my father literally put his hand on his chest like his heart hurt. She said she was done waiting for permission to be a mother, that she would rather raise a stranger's child alone than stay in a marriage where her own husband made her feel like she was broken. That is how stubborn she is. When she made up her mind as a kid, she would sit on the floor with her arms crossed for hours just to prove she would not move. As an adult, she just replaced the floor with life decisions. They adopted a boy who was about 8 years old. I will never forget the first photo she sent me. He stood there in this too big shirt, looking straight at the camera like he did not trust it. Dark eyes serious in a way a child's eyes should not be. She was radiant in the picture, holding him like he was both a trophy and a miracle. Her husband was in the background, looking like he had wandered into the frame by accident and was not sure if he was allowed to leave. That photo told me everything I needed to know before I even met the kid. The adoption went through with her listed as the only primary guardian because the husband made a whole show about not wanting his name on anything. He moved into the guest room 2 weeks after the kid arrived. My sister called me every day talking about how she was finally a mother and how everything would fall into place, because now that there was a real child in the house, her husband would soften and realize what they had. I did not have the heart to say what I was thinking, which was basically, girl, if he did not even want to sign the paper, what makes you think seeing the kid will change everything? The boy was quiet and polite the first time I visited. He watched my sister the way you watch a stranger who has the keys to your room. He ate fast, like he did not trust the food would still be there if he paused. He did not call her mom. She whispered to me in the kitchen that he would one day, and that when he did, everything would be worth it. She said it like she was trying to convince herself as much as me. Money was tight, and she only worked part-time at a little store. So when she could not find anyone cheap enough and trustworthy enough to watch him, she did what way too many overwhelmed parents end up doing even though they know they should not. She left him home alone sometimes when she had short shifts. Just a few hours at first, then more. She told him not to answer the door, not to use the stove, just watch television and wait. She told herself it was temporary, that she would figure something out soon. She told me she had no choice, which is what people say right before everything collapses. The boy mentioned it to his teacher one day, very casually, like you might mention your favorite cartoon. Kids do that. They drop life-altering information in the middle of a sentence about something else. Apparently, he said he had to microwave his own dinner sometimes, and that the house felt really quiet when his new mom was gone and the neighbors were arguing next door. The teacher did what she was supposed to do. She reported it. One afternoon, a social worker knocked on my sister's door without warning. It was one of those regular check-ins they do early in adoptions, except this time, she arrived, walked through the house, saw where the boy slept, listened to him talk, and realized he was being left alone way more than anyone had admitted. My sister tried to explain, tried to spin it as just a few emergencies, but the schedule on the fridge and the boy's own honest little answers did not match her story. It was not a dramatic scene like in movies, no shouting, no handcuffs. Nothing like that. Just a quiet, firm decision that the situation was not safe, and a child who had only just started to unpack, still learning what it meant to lose another home. He told the social worker he did not want to go back. That is the part that still punches me in the chest when I think about it. He told her there was always yelling in the house, and that he did not like being by himself for so long. My sister watched them drive away with him, and called me screaming so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. She said they had ripped him away from her, that everybody was against her, that nobody understood how hard she had fought to be a mother. I tried to say very carefully that leaving an 8-year-old alone for hours was not okay, no matter how much you love him. She hung up on me. The adoption agency cut contact after that, and her husband took it as his cue to finally walk out properly. He filed for divorce faster than I thought was possible, packed his things, and sent her one last message saying he wished her well but could not do this anymore. She blocked his number and then unblocked it just to send him paragraphs of rage that he probably never even read. She stopped answering our parents' calls after they told her, point blank, that she had not been ready for a child if she could not even arrange proper care. For a while, I was her only connection to our family. I was the one who called every week, who sent her grocery money when she said her card kept getting declined, who listened to the loop of, they stole my child and I am cursed and nobody understands. I knew she had messed up badly, but she was still my sister, and I did not have it in me to cut her off the way my parents did. I also felt guilty. I had been the one hyping her up when she first talked about adoption, the one saying she would be a great mom because she was so determined and loving. Every time she cried, it felt like I had helped push her toward the edge she eventually fell off. By that time, I was already married. My husband and I lived in a small house on the edge of town with a little yard that he swore he would fix up one day. It felt like ours, but on paper, it was still in my parents' name because they had helped us with the down payment years earlier. He worked in sales and had to travel once in a while to meet clients and do boring dinners that he always complained about. He was not perfect, but he was the one part of my life that felt steady. I trusted him in that quiet way you do when you have never had a good reason not to. The first time his work sent him to the city where my sister lived, I did not think anything of it. It made sense. It was one of the bigger cities in our region, a place people actually flew to instead of just driving through. I remember joking on the phone with my sister, saying she should show him around and make sure he did not spend the whole trip in a bland hotel room. She laughed and said something like, "Do not worry, I will take good care of him." And at the time it sounded like just a normal sibling-in-law thing to say. He came back saying the trip had been fine, just meetings and a quick dinner at some casual place my sister had suggested because she knew the city better than he did. I asked if it had been awkward, just the two of them, and he shrugged and said it was actually nice to talk to someone who already knew his whole life story without him having to explain it. I told him she had that effect on people, that she could make a stranger feel like they had known her for years after 20 minutes. I felt weirdly proud that my husband and my sister got along, like that meant I had chosen my partner well. After that, every time I talked to her, she asked little things about him that did not register as anything more than curiosity at first. How was work going for him? Was he still thinking about changing companies? Did he still hate planes? She would bring him up in the middle of conversations about completely different topics, like she remembered him randomly. I did not flag it as anything. If anything, I was relieved she had something to focus on that was not her own misery. Months went by like that. She and I had our weekly video calls where she would sit in her tiny kitchen, hair thrown up, talking about her part-time jobs and how lonely the apartment felt. Sometimes my husband would walk by in the background, wave at her, maybe joke a little, and then disappear back into the living room. Looking back, there were moments that should have felt off, subtle pauses, shared little smiles that lasted a beat too long. But when you trust people, you file those things under imagination and insecurity. I did not want to be the kind of wife who interrogated her husband or the kind of sister who assumed the worst, so I was neither. I was just blind. What I did not know back then, what I only learned later when everything was already broken, was that after that first trip, they had stayed in touch. It started innocent. At least that is how both of them described it. Messages checking in, funny memes, talking about shows they were watching so they had something distracting to discuss. That was not her ruined adoption or his boring work calls. They made each other laugh. I have heard enough of their messages now, thanks to my own bad habit of going through old things, to know they were not lying about that part. At some point, when his job sent him back to her city again, they decided to meet just as friends. I hate that phrase now. They had some drinks. They talked about how stressed they both were, and one thing led to another, as if gravity itself had pushed them into bed. That is how he described it to me later, like it had been this separate event outside of his control. She told me a different version, where they both knew exactly what they were doing, and he kissed her first. Somewhere between their stories is probably the truth, but honestly, it does not really matter. The fact is, they crossed a line, and then instead of panicking and backing away, they kept crossing it again and again. They were good at hiding it, apparently. They used work trips as excuses, late-night calls that I thought were him talking to clients. They sent each other secret messages while I was doing dishes or folding laundry, and I walked past both of them countless times without any idea. They built this entire alternate relationship on the bones of my trust and called it chemistry. I found all of that out later. At the time, what I saw was just my sister sounding gradually lighter on calls, like something in her life had shifted. She said she was seeing someone but would not tell me who, which was weird because she usually gave me every tiny detail about any man who so much as flirted with her. She hinted that he was older, stable, and already part of the family in a way. I laughed and asked if she was dating one of our cousins, because that was the only thing that made sense in my head. She rolled her eyes and said I would understand one day. I remember thinking she was being dramatic. I had no idea. The visit that blew everything up started with a text message in the middle of a regular Thursday at the clinic. It was from her, saying she wanted to come stay with us for a few days, that she had big news she wanted to share in person. I glanced at my phone between calls, smiled, and texted back that, of course, she was welcome. When could I pick her up from the bus station? When I told my husband that night she was coming, he paused for half a second, just long enough for my brain to register that something about his face looked off, and then he smiled and said, "That is great. She probably needs a change of scenery." He went quiet later, though. Not obvious quiet, not sulking, just thoughtful. He asked random questions about when exactly her bus would get in, how long she planned to stay, whether my parents knew she was coming. I figured he was worried about the tension with our parents, because they still had not fully forgiven her for the adoption disaster. I saw concern. Now I know it was panic. The day she arrived, I left work early, drove to the station, and scanned the crowd for her messy ponytail. I almost missed her because of the loose, soft shirt she was wearing, the way she held her bag in front of her stomach. When she stepped closer and I hugged her, my arms brushed against a small but undeniable curve under the fabric, and for a split second my brain short-circuited. She leaned back and watched my face, and I could feel my eyes go straight down to her stomach. "Are you?" I started, already sounding more excited than cautious, because for years I had trained myself to be the cheerleader every time there was even a hint of pregnancy around her. She smiled, this nervous, wobbly smile, and nodded. "About 3 months," she said softly. I did not even wait. I just pulled her back into a hug and started crying, right there in the middle of the station with people walking around us, because after everything she had gone through, after all the needles and tests and heartbreak, she was finally pregnant. I did not stop to think about timelines or who the father was or anything else. I just saw my sister's hand on her stomach and thought, finally. On the drive home, I had about 1,000 questions. Who was the father? Was he excited? Did he want to be involved? How had this happened without any treatments this time? She answered some of them in half sentences and vague phrases, staring out the window like the scenery outside was much more interesting than my curiosity. When I asked the question about the father directly, she laughed a little and said it was complicated, that he was married. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. Married as in separated but not officially? I asked, trying to find some kind of loophole in the obvious wrongness. Married as in married, she said, and then rushed to add, but it is not like that. You do not get it. It is different. I felt my stomach drop. So you are the other woman, I said, and I hated how flat my voice came out. She shook her head quickly. No, listen, it is not some random guy. He is miserable in his marriage. He has been for a long time. He told me they are done. They just have not filed yet. He loves me. I know he does. I almost launched into a lecture right there about how many times I had heard that line from friends or strangers online. But I bit my tongue. She was pregnant. She was glowing and terrified at the same time. I did not want to be the one to pop whatever bubble she had built for herself, at least not before we were even out of the car. So I said something neutral about how messy it all sounded and that I hoped he would do the right thing. She said he would. She said he was already planning everything. At home, as soon as we walked in, she looked around like she already knew every corner, even though she had only visited once before. She asked where my husband was before she even took her shoes off. I told her he was still at work and would be back in a couple of hours. She said, "Good, I need to talk to both of you," in this strange tone that made the hairs on my arms stand up. I made us tea because apparently I turn into a middle-aged sitcom character whenever there is any kind of emotional scene pending. We sat at the table and I tried again, gently, to ask more about the father. She kept dancing around details, saying it had been going on for almost a year, that they met through me, that I was going to be mad at first but would understand later. My brain tried to list every married man we both knew, and the list was not long. Cousins, friends of our parents, a former landlord who liked to flirt with anyone vaguely female. None of them made sense. I remember saying, "Who is he, though? I cannot even picture it." And her staring down at her cup, gripping it so tightly her knuckles went white. She took a deep breath like someone about to jump into cold water. "Please do not freak out when I say this," she said, which is exactly what you say when you are about to make sure someone definitely freaks out. My heart started pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears, but my mouth still decided to try a joke, because apparently I am incapable of reading the room even in my own kitchen. "What? Is it someone like my boss or something?" I asked, because that would be hilarious and tragic at the same time. She looked up at me, eyes shiny and terrified, and shook her head. "No," she whispered. "It is your husband." For a second, I honestly thought I had misheard her. Like my brain replaced whatever name she said with the one person it would never actually be, just because that is how fear works. I laughed, this horrible sharp sound, and said, "Very funny, try again," because that had to be some kind of sick joke she was using to avoid telling me the real truth. She did not laugh, she did not even smile. She just stared at me, and the longer she said nothing, the more the air in the room seemed to thicken. "I am serious," she finally said. "It is him. We have been seeing each other since that first trip last year. He is the father." My whole body went cold in a way I did not know was possible while still sitting upright. It felt like every blood vessel decided to shut down at the same time. I pushed my chair back so fast it screeched against the floor, and she flinched. I stood up because I could not look at her from that close. "Do not," I said, my voice shaking. "Do not say that again. That is not funny, that is sick. Why would you even joke about something like that?" "I am not joking," she said, and now there were tears running down her face. "He loves me. He told me he is miserable, that he should have been with me from the start. We did not plan this, but the baby is a sign. You know it is. He is going to leave. He just needed more time." I could barely breathe. My hands were shaking so hard I had to grab the back of the chair to steady myself. Images started flashing through my mind that I did not want. Them sitting across from each other at that restaurant. Them texting while I was in the shower. Her lonely apartment suddenly not so lonely whenever he came to town. My throat burned. "You are telling me," I said slowly, because I needed to hear the words in the air, "that you have been sleeping with my husband for almost a year, behind my back, and now you are here, in my house, telling me you are pregnant with his child and expecting me to what? Throw you a baby shower?" She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand like a child. "I did not want to hurt you," she said, and I actually laughed out loud at that. I lost my son, my marriage, everything. When he and I started talking, it felt like the universe was finally giving me someone who understood me. One thing led to another. I know it looks bad, but it is not just some affair. There are real feelings here. I wanted to go across that table and shake her. You could have slept with literally any other man on the planet, I snapped. You picked the one person you knew would wreck my entire life if this ever came out. What, did you run out of strangers? She slammed her hand on the table, making our cups rattle. You think this was easy for me? She yelled. You got the good marriage, the stable husband, the house, the job where nobody calls you a failure every day. I got divorce papers and a file with my name in a child protection office. For once, something good happens to me and he chooses me. Really chooses me. And you want me to feel guilty about it? Something inside me broke right there. I felt this hot wave of rage rise up from my chest to my face, and for a second I honestly did not trust myself to stay on the other side of the table. I pictured grabbing her, screaming in her face until she understood what she had done, and I had to walk away before my body decided to act on that impulse. Get out, I said, my voice low and shaking. Get out of my house before I do something both of us are going to regret. I mean it. Leave. She stared at me like she could not believe I meant it. You are throwing me out? She asked, hand on her stomach like I was kicking her and the baby onto the street in the middle of winter. I came here to tell you the truth because I thought you deserved that at least. I thought maybe eventually you could understand. Understand that my husband cheated on me with my own sister and got her pregnant? I shouted. No, I do not think I am ever going to understand that. Pack your bag. She stood up slowly, tears still falling, and for a second she looked very small, like the kid who used to follow me around the house asking if she could borrow my clothes. Then her face hardened. She said something like, "You are being dramatic. We can talk about this like adults." And I just repeated, "Get out," over and over, until she grabbed her things and walked toward the door. At the doorway, she turned back, anger finally winning over the guilt in her expression. "You are going to lose him," she said. "You know that, right? He does not want this life with you anymore. He wants me and our baby. You are just delaying the inevitable. Take your inevitable and go," I said. Because apparently even in the middle of my world exploding, I still make dumb remarks. She muttered something I did not catch, slammed the door, and was gone. I stood there in the silent house, staring at the door frame like maybe she would come back and say, "Just kidding, it was all a horrible prank." Nobody did. It was just me, the cooling tea, and the buzzing in my ears. The rest of that day is a blur. I know I called in sick to work for the next day. I know I paced from the kitchen to the living room about 100 times. I know I called my husband's phone over and over and it went straight to voicemail. I tried to tell myself that meant he was stuck in a meeting, that he would walk through the door at his usual time, and I would be able to look him in the eye and know if she was lying. Instead, the hours dragged on, and the house stayed empty. By the time the sky was dark and the street outside had quieted down, my imagination had already done the worst possible thing. It had placed them together somewhere, maybe in that cheap motel near the highway, him holding her hand, telling her they would face this together. I hated that my brain was so good at writing scenes that hurt me. When he finally came home, it was almost midnight. I heard his car, the way the engine clicked as it cooled, then the sound of his keys fumbling at the front door like his hands were not cooperating. He walked in smelling like cheap alcohol and something like fear. His hair was messy, his shirt half untucked, eyes red. He froze when he saw me sitting on the couch. Lights still on. "Hey," he said, voice rough, "you are still up." I looked at him for a long second, taking in every detail, because I knew whatever came out of his mouth next was going to change my entire life. "She was here," I said calmly, which surprised both of us. She told me everything. He did not even bother to pretend he did not know who I meant. His shoulders sagged, and he closed his eyes like someone waiting for impact. He walked over and dropped onto the other end of the couch, burying his face in his hands. That is when I did something I never thought I would do to someone I loved. I reached for my phone and quietly hit record. I did it because I know him. I know how he can twist things, how he likes to leave out the ugly parts when he tells stories about what happened. I knew if I did not capture exactly what he said in that moment, sober or not, he would rewrite it the next day, and I would start doubting myself. So I just pressed the button, placed the phone face down on the cushion beside me, and let him talk. "I messed up," he said, voice muffled. "I messed up so badly. I am so sorry." "Define messed up," I said. "Use full sentences." He lifted his head slowly, eyes full of tears. She and I, it started when I went to see her for work last year," he said. We were both drinking. We were talking about everything she had been through, how alone she felt. You had told me some things, but hearing it from her, it was different. I do not know. One thing led to another. I swear I never planned to hurt you. I almost stopped him right there to tell him that nobody ever says they plan to hurt the person they are cheating on, but I stayed quiet. This was for the record, literally. After that, we said it was a mistake, he continued. We promised it would not happen again, but we kept talking, and every time I went back there for work, it just happened. She made me feel needed. I felt like I was helping her, you know? She was so broken after everything with the adoption and her ex, and I just wanted to be there for her. You wanted to be there for her without telling your wife, I said flatly. He winced. I know how it sounds, he said. I was stupid. I thought I could keep it separate, that it would not touch what you and I have. I love you. I never stopped loving you. I almost laughed in his face. And the baby? I asked. How does that fit into your little separate life? He swallowed hard. I did not mean for that to happen, he said. She told me she could not have kids. I thought it was not even possible. When she said she was pregnant, I panicked. Is it yours? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. I think I just wanted to hear him say it out loud. He nodded slowly. Probably, he said. I mean, yes, she says it is. I have not done any tests, but yes. He started crying then, full body sobs that shook his shoulders. He rambled about how he never meant for things to get this far, how he hated himself, how he knew he had betrayed me in the worst possible way. I just sat there, feeling weirdly calm, like my emotions had packed a bag and gone on vacation without me. She told me you are leaving me for her, I said. Is that what you are doing? Are you moving in with her and playing happy family? He shook his head violently. No, he said. I do not want that. She wants that, but I never said I was going to leave you. I told her I was confused, that I needed time, that maybe we could find some way to figure this out without blowing up everything. I thought maybe I could just, I do not know, help her financially, be there for the kid from a distance if I had to. I cannot lose you too. You are my life. So there it was. He was perfectly willing to keep sleeping with my sister, to keep lying to me, to have a child on the side as long as I stayed where I was and did not make too much noise about it. He wanted both lives, and secretly, he probably thought he deserved them. What about the baby? I asked again, because I wanted him to talk about the actual living person involved in this mess instead of just his precious feelings. What is your plan there? He hesitated, then said the one thing I will never forget. Honestly, he muttered, I wish she would not have it. It was a mistake. She is desperate. She clings to any man who gives her attention. You know how she is. I should have seen it. I should have kept my distance. I did not mean to get her pregnant, and I do not want to build a life with her. I cannot do it. She is not someone I could ever really love like that. Hearing him talk about my sister like that, the same sister he had apparently been whispering sweet things to in bed for months, almost made me more sick than the cheating itself. He wanted to make her the crazy one, the one who forced this on him while he played the poor, confused victim. You know I am recording this, right? I said suddenly. He blinked, startled. What? He asked. I am recording everything you are saying, I repeated. Because both of you lie so easily, I need proof of what actually came out of your mouth tonight. He stared at the phone like it was a snake. Why would you do that? He asked. Because I know you, I said. I know that tomorrow you would wake up, sober up, and try to tell me a different story. I am not giving you that option. He started to protest, but I was done. My calm snapped, and everything I had been holding back poured out. I yelled. I cried. I asked him all the questions that had been racing through my mind since my sister dropped her bomb in the kitchen. How many times? Where? Did you ever think about me at all while you were touching her? Did you laugh about me together? Did you call out the wrong name by accident? Did she wear my clothes? Did she sleep in my bed? He swore it had never happened in our house. He swore they had always met somewhere else, another town, another bed, as if that detail made any difference. He said it was just physical for him, that he never loved her, that she meant nothing compared to me. I do not know if he expected me to feel flattered hearing that my sister meant nothing to him. When I finally stopped shouting because my voice was going hoarse, I told him to leave. I did not say we were done because some part of me still needed time to catch up to that reality, but I knew I could not sleep next to him that night without wanting to throw something at his head. Go to a friend's place, I said. Go to a motel. I do not care. Just get out of this house. He begged. Of course he did. He got on his knees in front of me like some bad movie scene, grabbing at my hands, promising therapy and couples retreats and whatever else he had seen in online articles about saving marriages. I pulled my hands back and pointed at the door. Eventually, he stood up, grabbed his keys, and left. The second the door closed behind him, my legs stopped working. I slid down onto the floor and sat there in the hallway, staring at the little scuff marks on the baseboard. I felt like I had just been in a car crash where the airbag did not deploy. My chest hurt. My head hurt. I was pretty sure my face would be permanently swollen from all the crying. I barely slept that night. At some point, around dawn, I made a decision that might seem harsh to some people. But honestly, I do not regret it. I decided that if they wanted to blow up my life, I was not going to let them control the narrative of that explosion. I was going to make sure everybody who mattered knew exactly what they had done, in their own words, not their edited versions. I called my parents first. My mother answered on the third ring, voice already tense because nobody calls that early unless something is wrong. I told her, in plain language, that my husband had been cheating on me with my sister, and that she was pregnant. There was a beat of silence, then a loud, sharp, "What?" that probably woke my father up before I even heard his voice in the background. I walked them through the whole story, the visit, the confession, the recording. My father kept saying things like, "You have got to be kidding me," and "she would not do that." And I just kept talking, because I needed them to get to the part where disbelief turned into anger. When I mentioned the recording, my mother told me to send it to them. I said I would. But first I wanted to confront both of them face to face. We came up with a plan that, in any other context, would have felt petty and dramatic. In this context, it felt like the only fair way to do things. I texted my sister, telling her I had calmed down and wanted to talk properly, just the three of us. Her, my husband, and me. I said I was willing to listen, to hear their side, to figure out what to do. She replied that she was relieved and that she would be there that afternoon. I texted my husband something similar, that we needed to talk, that he should come over after work. What I did not tell them was that my parents would be there too, waiting in the back bedroom until I called them out. It sounds like a trap, and honestly, it was. But after what they had done, I did not feel any obligation to give them a comfortable setting to lie to my face. When my sister arrived, she walked in like she half expected me to start yelling again the moment the door opened. She had changed clothes, hair brushed, makeup on, like she was going to a job interview instead of a confrontation. She sat on the edge of the couch and put a hand on her stomach, looking around. "Where is he?" she asked. "On his way," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "We are going to wait for him." She nodded and started talking about how she had barely slept. About how she knew I was hurt, but that she hoped we could find a way to move forward because the baby deserves a family. I listened without responding, just watching her face, thinking about all the years I had spent defending her to other people, trying to explain her impulsive decisions like there was always some noble reason behind them. When my husband walked in a few minutes later, the energy in the room shifted. He looked from me to her and back again, eyes wide, probably noticing that I was too calm. He sat down in the chair opposite us like he was at a job interview, too. "Okay," I said. "Here we all are. Before anyone starts giving speeches, I want you both to hear something." I picked up my phone, opened the recording from the night before, and hit play. His voice filled the room, slurred but clear enough. We listened to him admitting the affair, the timeline, the fact that he never planned to leave me, his wish that she would not keep the baby. His lovely little comments about her being desperate and not someone he could ever love. My sister's face went through about 5 different emotions in 30 seconds. Shock, confusion, hurt, anger, then this hollow kind of numbness. She stared at him while his own words about her played out loud like some twisted voiceover. When he called her easy and a mistake, she flinched like he had slapped her. He stood up, reaching for her. "It was late," he said quickly, panicking. "I was drunk. I did not mean it like that. I was just trying to, I do not know, say what she wanted to hear." "You called me desperate," she said quietly. "You said you could never love me." "I did not mean it," he insisted. "I was scared. I thought if I made it sound like nothing, she would not leave me. I was trying to fix it." "You were trying to fix it by throwing me under the bus?" she snapped, voice finally rising. "After everything we have said to each other, everything you promised, that is how you talk about me when she is the one listening?" The two of them started arguing, actually arguing with each other over who had hurt who more in their own betrayal of me, and that is when I decided it was time to bring in the rest of the jury. I walked down the hall, opened the bedroom door, and told my parents they could come out now. The look on my sister's face when she saw them was almost comical if the situation had not been so horrible. My mother walked in first, lips pressed together so tightly they were almost white. My father followed, his jaw clenched, eyes colder than I had ever seen them when looking at one of his children. "You have got to be kidding me," my sister whispered. My father did not yell. He did not need to. His voice was calm and deadly quiet when he spoke. "Is it true?" he asked. "Are you really having an affair with your brother-in-law and carrying his child?" She opened her mouth, closed it, then tried to reach for some version of the story that made her less of a villain. She said they had fallen in love, that it was not planned, that she had been through so much, and that he had been there when nobody else had. She tried to paint it as a tragic romance instead of what it really was. A selfish decision made over and over again at my expense. My mother did not let her finish. "You took your sister's husband," she said, voice shaking. "After everything she has done for you, after all the times she defended you, you looked at the one stable thing in her life and decided you wanted that too." My sister started crying again. Big, messy sobs this time, not the controlled tears from earlier. She kept saying, "I did not mean to," and "it just happened." And my father cut her off with a short, brutal sentence. "You are no daughter of mine," he said. "Get out of this house. Do not come back." She stared at him like he had physically hit her. Maybe because coming from him, those words were worse than any slap. "You cannot mean that," she whispered. "I do," he said. "You chose this. You chose yourself over your own family again and again. Do not expect us to keep paying for your choices." She looked at me then, like maybe I would swoop in and soften his words. For years, that had been my role, the translator between her chaos and our parents' rigid lines. Not this time. I met her eyes and said, "He is right. For him, for Mom, for me, you did this. You do not get to cry your way out of it." She stood up on shaky legs, looking around like she did not recognize the room anymore. My husband reached out a hand toward her, probably on instinct, and my mother slapped it away. Then she did something I did not even know she had in her. She slapped him, hard, across the face. "You destroyed my daughter's home," she said. "You humiliated her. You sat at this table eating our food, hugging us, while sleeping with her sister behind her back. You are filth." He did not defend himself. He just sat there, head down, cheek turning red. For once, he had the decency to shut up. After that, things moved fast. My father told him he needed to leave the house at once and that he would be hearing from a lawyer. Not because we wanted some dramatic lawsuit, but because we wanted everything documented and clean, so he could not twist the story later or make the living situation messy. We are not a family that sues people for every little thing, but there are lines. He gave my husband a week to find somewhere else to live and then said he was not welcome on the property anymore. My mother walked my sister to the door. There was no hug, no last-minute softening. She just opened the door, said, "Do not call me," and closed it behind her once my sister stepped outside. I watched from the hallway, feeling like I was floating above my own life. It was surreal, seeing the two people who had hurt me the most now looking so small, so fragile, while the parents who had always tried to smooth things over suddenly turned into the hard edge of the blade. In the days that followed, I filed for divorce. It was not some long, dramatic process. We had no kids. The house was technically in my parents' name because they had helped us with the down payment, and he was too ashamed to fight for anything. He signed whatever needed to be signed and moved into a tiny rental on the other side of town. I sent the recording to his mother and his brother. His family is very religious, the kind of people who think having a glass of wine with dinner is borderline sinful. I did not do it to be petty. I did it because I knew he was going to try to spin the situation as some mutual bad decision, a moment of weakness. I wanted them to hear him, in his own voice, describing my sister as pathetic and wishing the baby did not exist. If anything was going to break through the layers of denial, it was that. It worked. His mother called me sobbing, apologizing over and over, saying she had raised him better than this. She begged me to reconsider the divorce, to give him another chance because marriage is sacred, and everybody makes mistakes. I told her I was pretty sure not everybody cheated with their wife's sister and then insulted her behind her back, but I thanked her for the apology. Word spread in their church community faster than I thought possible. By the time the papers were signed, he had been quietly removed from some of the volunteer positions he held. People he used to joke with suddenly went stiff around him, and he was walking around town with that look people get when they know other people are whispering about them. As for my sister, she went back to her city. She called me a few times from different numbers after I blocked her main one, left voicemails where she alternated between furious and broken. In one, she screamed that I had ruined her life by telling our parents and his family. In another, she sobbed that she had lost her baby after a complicated night at the hospital, and that she had needed me, and I had not been there. I listened to that one exactly once and then deleted it. I will be honest. When I found out she had miscarried, I did not feel relief. I did not feel joy. I felt this horrible mix of sadness and numbness. A baby who did not ask to be conceived in that mess never got the chance to exist. At the same time, I could not bring myself to call her. I knew that if I did, she would twist my sympathy into a rope to pull herself back into my life, and I did not have the strength to let that happen. The divorce went through in a matter of weeks. My lawyer said it was one of the simplest cases she had handled that year, which almost made me laugh considering how complicated everything felt inside my head. On paper, it was just two people ending a marriage with no children, no major assets, no fight. In reality, it was the end of the version of my life I had been building in my head since my early 20s. After everything was finalized, I moved out of the house. My parents offered to let me stay with them, but I knew I needed my own space, somewhere without memories embedded in every piece of furniture. I found a small apartment across town, nothing fancy, but it had good light in the kitchen and a view of a tree that turned bright red in the fall. I bought a cheap couch, a second-hand table, some dishes that did not match anything from the old house, and for the first time in years, every single thing in my living room belonged to me and me alone. I started therapy. At first, I spent a lot of sessions talking about them, about how angry I was, about how humiliated I felt, about how I replayed that ridiculous hug at the bus station over and over in my mind like some cruel joke. My therapist listened and nodded and occasionally asked questions that made me realize I was angrier at myself than at anyone else. I was angry that I had seen the warning signs and brushed them off because I did not want to be that person. I was angry that I had always been the responsible one, the fixer, the person who lent money and answered calls and defended my sister, and that when it came down to it, none of that loyalty had meant anything to her. I was angry that some part of me still missed my husband, not even as a partner, but as the person who shared inside jokes about the neighbors and knew exactly how I liked my coffee. The therapist told me that forgiving someone and letting them back into your life are two completely different things. She said I might never forgive them fully, and that was okay. She also said I might one day find a kind of peace about it that did not involve forgiving or forgetting, just accepting that this is a chapter of my story that happened and cannot be edited out. My parents struggled in their own ways. My mother cried a lot, not just for me, but for the idea of the daughter she thought she had. She kept saying, "I raised you girls to love each other. How did this happen?" As if there was a simple answer. My father stayed quiet most of the time, but once, after a family dinner that felt like walking through a minefield, he hugged me and said, "You did nothing wrong." It was short, but coming from him, it was a whole speech. As for my sister, months went by with no actual contact. I heard bits and pieces through mutual acquaintances, because no matter how much you try to cut someone out, life has a way of circling them back into your peripheral vision. She had health issues after the miscarriage, then some brief attempt at going back to school that she dropped when she realized sitting still in a classroom did not magically fix her life. People mentioned seeing her at a bar, alone, or with some stranger, or arguing on the sidewalk with someone on the phone. Sometimes I would start to type out a message to her, something like, "Are you okay?" or "We need to talk," and then I would delete it. Every time I pictured what that conversation would actually look like, it ended with her crying and me feeling guilty, and none of that changed the fact that she had made choices that blew up my life and then expected me to hand her a tissue. I wish I could wrap this whole thing up with some neat moral about family and forgiveness. I wish I could say that I found out there was some deep trauma that explained everything she did, that I uncovered some hidden part of my husband's psyche that made it all make sense. But the truth is, sometimes people just do selfish, cruel things, because in the moment, what they want matters more to them than the damage they are doing. Sometimes there is no bigger reason than that. The last time I saw my ex-husband, I ran into him at a grocery store. He looked smaller somehow, like life had been slowly sanding down his edges. He saw me, froze, then gave a little awkward wave. I nodded, walked past him, and finished my shopping. My hands shook a bit when I paid for my food, but by the time I loaded the bags into my car, my heart had slowed down. I sat there for a minute, hands on the steering wheel, and realized the world had not ended. because he was standing 3 aisles away from me near the cereal. The last time I heard my sister's voice was on a voicemail she left a few months ago. She did not cry. She sounded tired. Older. She said she had heard I moved and that she hoped I was okay. She said she was sorry, really sorry, and that she missed talking to me. She did not mention the affair or the baby. She did not ask me to call back, just said she hoped one day I would be able to look at her without hate. I still have that voicemail. I have not deleted it, but I also have not responded. Maybe one day I will. I do not know. Right now, my peace costs more than nostalgia. Sometimes, when I am sitting in my little kitchen eating dinner alone, my mind goes back to that boy she adopted, the one with the too big shirt and the serious eyes. I wonder where he is now. If he ended up with people who tuck him in at night and remember his favorite snack. If he still jumps when adults raise their voices. I feel guilty for missing a child who was never mine more than I miss the sister who actually shares my blood. But that is where I am. I think a lot about how adults make choices that kids pay for. How he got dragged into her desperation and the system, and then disappeared from our lives like he had never been there at all. There are days when I rage in my head at her for that, more than anything she did to me. She wanted to be a mother so badly that she ignored all the parts of being a mother that are not about baby clothes and cute photos. She did not show up when it mattered. And the truth that hurts the most is that maybe she is not capable of being the person she dreams she is. Maybe neither of them are. That does not make me better, by the way. It just makes me tired. My parents and I dance around her name most of the time. On holidays, there is this empty chair at the table that nobody mentions, even though we all see it. My mother still buys too much food out of habit, and then sends me home with containers because she does not want to admit she cooked for someone who is not coming. Once, my father saw a woman at the store from behind and went pale because he thought it was her. It was not, but he had to go sit in the car for a few minutes anyway. For all his tough talk, losing a child who is still alive but no longer part of your life is its own kind of grief. At work, people only know the sanitized version. They know I got divorced because my husband cheated, and that is about it. Nobody wants to hear the full extended edition where the other woman is your sister and your family tree is now a crime scene. One of my coworkers tried to set me up with her cousin recently, and I actually laughed so hard I had to pretend I was choking on my coffee. I am not saying I will never date again, but right now the idea of sitting across from a stranger and explaining this whole mess feels like more effort than I have energy for. I did download a dating app once, just to see. I filled out half a profile, stared at the list of questions about hobbies and favorite movies and ideal first dates, and then deleted the whole thing when it asked me what I was looking for. I do not know what I am looking for. I do not trust my own radar yet. I used to point at my marriage and say, this is what safe looks like. Clearly, I was not the best judge. Instead of dating, I have been doing little things that feel like reclaiming myself. I painted my living room a soft color my ex would have hated. I signed up for a pottery class and am currently the proud owner of 3 extremely ugly bowls that I refuse to throw away. I go for long walks with music blasting in my ears and let myself cry behind sunglasses when a song hits too close. None of it is glamorous. None of it would make a good montage in a movie. But it is mine. Every once in a while, my phone lights up with a number I do not recognize, and my stomach still drops, because my brain is sure it is her calling from yet another new phone. Sometimes it is just a spam call about my car warranty. Sometimes it is a wrong number. Every time I let it ring, I'm not at the point where I can hear her voice live without months of progress unraveling in one conversation. Listening to a voicemail on my own time is already a lot. I talk about her in therapy more than I talk about him now. He is almost old news. A terrible decision I made in my 20s that lasted longer than it should have. She is the one my mind keeps circling back to, because she is tangled up in childhood and holidays, and all the times I put her needs before my own. My therapist keeps bringing up the word boundaries like it is a new language I need to learn. Apparently saying no is a full sentence. Who knew? There is a tiny, very stubborn part of me that still remembers the good versions of her. The girl who braided my hair for school pictures, who shared her bed with me when I was scared of thunderstorms, who mailed me a silly card when I failed my first driving test. That makes it harder, not easier. If she had always been a villain, I could just write her off. But she is not a cartoon. She is a mess of good and bad decisions, just like the rest of us, except her bad decisions have sharp edges that cut everyone around her. Sometimes I wonder what she tells people about me. If she paints me as cold and unforgiving, the sister who turned the whole family against her, the woman who did not even call after she lost the baby. Maybe in her version, I am the villain. Maybe there is a group of people somewhere who only know me as the cruel older sister who could not find it in her heart to forgive. The thought used to bother me more than it does now. These days, I am too busy trying to be someone I can live with to worry about what strangers think. So that is it. That is how my sister ended up pregnant with my husband's child, and how I ended up alone in a small apartment with mismatched dishes and a plant I am trying very hard not to kill. I am not healed. I am not enlightened. I am just a woman who thought her biggest problem in life was an annoying job and a nosy neighbor, and then found out her own family could hurt her in ways strangers never could. People sometimes tell me I am strong for cutting them off, for not going back, for not folding at the first apology. I do not feel strong. I feel like someone who survived a house fire and is still coughing from the smoke months later. But I am learning how to build something new from the ashes, piece by piece. It is not pretty. It is not some inspirational quote over a sunset. It is me getting up, going to work, paying bills, remembering to eat, calling my parents, laughing at stupid shows, and occasionally, when my phone buzzes with an unknown number, choosing not to answer. I am allowed to protect myself, even from my own blood, especially from my own blood. And if there is one thing I know for sure now, it is this. Love without boundaries is not love. It is self-harm dressed up as loyalty. I spent years bleeding for people who would not have done the same for me. I am done bleeding. If you are listening to this and thinking you would have handled it better, maybe you would have. Maybe you would have kicked them both out on day one and never looked back. Maybe you would have forgiven, gone to couples therapy, stood next to your sister in a delivery room holding her hand. I am not that person. I did what I could with the brain and the heart I have. Some days I am proud of that. Some days I lie awake at night replaying every word I said and did not say, wondering if there was a version of this story where less damage got done. There is not, though. That is the thing. The only person whose choices I control now is me, so I pay my rent on time. I show up for my tiny life. I answer my parents' calls. I water that stubborn plant on the windowsill even when I am sure it is going to die. I make plans for weekends and actually follow through, even if the plan is just watching something silly until I fall asleep on the couch. It is small and ordinary and very boring from the outside. From where I am sitting, it is the most peaceful my life has been in years.